Alrighty, hey everybody, Steve here, and today what we're ended up doing is we're going to take a look at a project that I ended up doing and with engraving and the K10, kind of a glass engraving adventure type of thing, and go over what we ended up doing. Now, usually I do live videos going from start to finish, but this was a little bit more involved and it would take too much time. Nobody would watch that long of a video. So what I ended up doing is just kind of videoing and recording the different types of events there. And yeah, we're going to kind of cut and paste and do all that and show you what we ended up doing. Oh, in case you didn't know, my name is Steve. I'm the retired hobby technician. You can find me on YouTube on The Varied Life. And then if you're watching this on Facebook, you're watching it on Facebook. Anyway, so what we're going to start off with is a picture of what I ended up doing. That's a picture of me and the wife, and that's actually at a very famous place here in Korea. It's a street that has lined with ginkgo trees, and we got there, this was last year, and not all of the trees had turned totally yellow. So we're going to wait a little bit longer for this year to make sure that they're all yellow, and we go down the street and it is just really, really beautiful. So we ended up getting a pretty nice picture. And I thought, besides doing the Warhammer, ooh, ooh, ah, manly type of stuff, I thought, well, let's do something a little bit with just me and the wife. So I wanted to take this picture, and what I ended up doing is going over to imagr.com, or IMAG r.com, and what you can end up doing, this is the website. There's like 6 steps excuse me, in which you can process images. So you can upload it, you can crop your photo, you can resize it, you can increase your DPI, which is a very important step. I wasn't doing that before, and so I had like a DPI of like 72, and when I found out that under resize, you can increase the DPI to 350, 508. You get a lot better clarity. Then you can add some text if you want. I've never done that yet, but it's an option. And then you can go through and you can choose the material on what you're going to engrave on. So they have material and equipment settings for like CO2 lasers. They have diode lasers. So I use the Norton version for glass. And of course, when I did my slate coasters, I choose slate. And the great thing about this is that when you do that material choice, it actually has a preview button of what it can look like on that material. So for like slate, it is pretty damn close as far as the results that you get. And of course, when you go into Lightburn, you have to make sure that it's passed through, and I'll talk about that a little bit. So once you get down to choosing your material and you like the results, you can fine tune it and, change the gamma, the contrast, the brightness, this and that, the sharpness, the noise, to get the best bang for your buck out of the picture. They also have some one-touch settings, which work okay, and it gives you decent results. But with that, you finally get down to the download part, and you're able to download the image and drag that into Lightburn. So that's kind of a cool thing that we have there. So once we drag that image into Lightburn, and let me kind of show you what we're talking about here. When we talk about Lightburn, let's get rid of that image there. And we'll do a little camera overlay of me here. And that's, okay, that's what, move this, so I'm center. So this isn't actually a graphic, but it is a frame and stand that we're going to be using a little bit later on. But if we go over here to the cut and we double click, what you can come up with, oh, it didn't show it. So I guess I'll have to drag a graphic in here. Let's just drag something like this, just for grins, and to highlight and show you what I'm talking about. So let's say that's the graphic that we want to engrave on whatever material. So we go over here, if we right click, it'll flash whatever that item is. We double click, and once you process an image through ImageR, then what you can end up doing is just hitting pass through, and it'll negate all of these settings here. So in other words, you've already done the settings to the photo or the graphic on image R, and if you just do pass through, then you don't have to mess with anything else. So that's kind of an important step there. Yeah, so that's what we got going on. The next step that we ended up doing was the actual engraving, and that's what we're going to take a look at next. Oh, here we are, and there's the picture of the engraving, and we did process the glass a little bit. Glass normally isn't black, and so what we ended up doing is painting that with an acrylic black, and it turned out fairly well. So yeah, it turned out really good. The engraving, as you can see there, even through the orange safety cover, you can see we got some real good clarity and definition. And if we take a look at the results here, that right there is what we got. I was really impressed with the results on that. Now, what I ended up doing with that is, it was kind of like, okay, well, that's the results. And then I cleaned off the glass, and what I was left with was this. And so you can see, even if it's just frosted, you know, I mean, we got some good results on that. But, I mean, it's not something that would really stand out. I mean, if this was on a wall, you'd be kind of like, okay, well, what's that? And then you have to get up close to see what it is. And so, yeah, as far as this, it is what it is. It's nice, but I think it needs some background color, or leave the paint on. And so what I did on a second run was actually leave the paint on, and that is the result that we got. And I mean, just look at that. It ended up being great. Let's see if I can get me in frame here. So, really great results with the black painted glass and doing the engraving. And this could be interesting because you could do any dark color. Perhaps, you know, some dark brown. You could get some different colors and hues in there. But again, what the laser does is goes through and burns off the paint or levels of that paint, and it leaves, you know, compared to what we had on our thing here. So like, look at the wife. If we can get it to focus, you know, we can get a little bit of that, but by leaving the black on there, what we ended up with was a really, really nice picture. And, you know, the frosted, you know, the engraved glass turned out pretty decent. But this over here turned out really, really, really nice. And so I had an idea, and I said, you know what, I'm going to coat this with varnish. So that way the acrylic paint, which is a plant-based, water-based paint type of thing, it washes off with water. It's not harmful to the environment or anything. And I'll varnish it, so that way it stays on there. That black won't come off, and maybe even in hindsight use a different type of paint, something more permanent, maybe even a spray can or something. And so I said, well, I want to display this, so the next step is going to cut out a frame. So, and again, there's the finished result. And over here, what I ended up doing on Lightburn is creating some corners. Now again, on the K10 that I have, the engrave or cut area is only 80 by 80 millimeters. So what I ended up doing is creating, just off of Lightburn, corners. So I had 1, 2, 3, 4 corners, and I had the front, the back, and then down on the bottom, I had spacers that would go in between those. So basically what would end up happening is I would end up with, let me get myself in there. What I would end up doing is actually sandwiching the pieces of basswood, and then I'd have the glass, and then I'd have more basswood, so I'd have a nice corner that would contain that picture, kind of frame it out. Because these edges on here are really sharp, and it's a really thin glass, but I have cut myself on this. So I was like, yeah, I need to put corners on there. So what I ended up doing is going through creating the corners, and that turned out pretty good. So I'm just kind of showing you the settings. I think it was 1100 at 100% power for cutting, and there is the video. Yeah, it goes kind of slow, but those are making the spacers, and then it went through, and you can see that it's making the corners in a fairly decent amount of time. It's a 5-watt laser. What do you expect? So we continued on, and it was finishing up here, and the results that I got were pretty good. And of course, if you do any type of cutting, you need to do a materials test beforehand. So we're going to go ahead and pull this out. Notice how pieces just fall off with minimal scoring or charring on the top of that there. Of course, I don't have a honeycomb bed or anything, so you get a little bit of discoloration on the back of those. But those came out fairly well, and yeah, those are the pieces there. You can see some on the back had some discoloration because of the wood itself, and it turned out pretty good. The next step was to get some glue, and I only had modeling glue and some Elmer's glue. So I had to use a combination of both of those things. But basically, I just took one of the corners, I glued in the spacer, and then I ended up putting another piece on there. So basically, it was sandwiched together. And so there it is. I'm just kind of reinforcing that a little bit and put that in there. Sandwich the two corners with the spacer. And what did I end up doing with that? Yeah, just use a close clip, whatever that's called, and yeah, just let those dry, and it turned out, yeah, they worked out pretty good. So the next thing that we ended up doing was going out and cutting out the stand, and that's what we saw on the Lightburn before. So what I ended up doing is just making a little stand. I looked online, and I had some problems and some difficulties before in the past because of the material that I was using. There we go. The material I was using, even though it was advertised as 3mm basswood, it was like 3.3 or 3.27, so it depends on the board that I got. But yeah, it came out to about 3.3 millimeters. So in doing cutting and things like that and pre-made stands, it was measured out for 3mm. So those stands that I tried to use didn't work. Okay, they ended up breaking. So this is when I went to Lightburn, and I ended up creating and making my own little stand there. So pretty fairly easy. I've already had some people ask me how I made the stand, and what I'll end up doing is making another video showing that in its entirety of how I just made this little stand. It's not crazy, it's not fantastic, it's just drawing some boxes and merging some shapes together and doing a little bit of measurement and with your material, which basically comes down to making the stand. What I was most concerned with was the slot height and the thickness of my material, so that they would both match, and it turned out pretty good. So and basically what we ended up here is, there it is. I mean, we got a little bit of scarring on here, but that's because that was on the bottom of the page. I'm not really interested in that. I guess I could sand it or paint it or whatever, but since it's not going to be seen, but it came together really well. Don't have any problems in regards to the fit. A little bit of Elmer's glue on there, boom, and it was good to go. So if I end up putting something on here, so I could just do something like this, but again, it's kind of like, okay, what am I looking at? I'm looking at the stand, but I can't really see the background, and that's another reason why I decided to keep the black paint. So we did that, and then the next step was varnishing. So again, I just varnished the entire thing, and after a while, I put everything together, and that's what we're going to take a look at now. So, and the other thing I ended up doing, I took another piece of glass and I painted white, because with the black, and even though the engraving had gone down, through the black, you would still see what was ever behind it. So even with the stand, you would see a little bit of a hint of, and I wish I had another one. I don't, unfortunately. I thought, yeah. But even with the black paint still on there, when I put the stand on there, you could still see a little bit of hint of the stand in the back of the picture. So I was like, okay, well, I've got like 24 pieces of this glass. And my idea was, well, I'll paint white onto the glass and then I'll put that behind. Now, the cool thing was, here is the white, and that turned out really good. And the corners, and it just so happened that these corners ended up fitting perfectly. Let's see if we get. And so that's with keeping all the paint on, and these corners actually fit perfectly. So with the material, if we can zoom in there and focus. But with the corners, I had a corner, I had a spacer, and then another corner. And when I glued all those together, by dumb luck, it wasn't planned, that the two pieces of glass that I use, it's sandwiched perfectly inside of those corners. And so what I ended up with is a white background. And if we're going to focus sometime soon in the next, there we go. So the corners ended up looking really nice, kind of framed it out a little bit, gave it a little bit more, nicer look to it. Again, it's probably not something I would sell. We've got the white on the background, but we have the two sheets of glass on there, and it's on the shiny side on this side, so the paint is on the inside. So it stays together rather well, and again, the results are really nice. And I get that constant white coming through the background, and so an interesting option, or some other options, would be, what would this look like with a yellow background or some other color besides white? So, I imagine you could do a lot of different tests and trial and error, but I think this turned out pretty good, considering it's just a cheap piece of glass, and we did some acrylic paint. I think in the future I would get something that would be a little bit more durable, and then even after engraving, I would do a clear coat of varnish, something with like UV protection. So that it would give more protection to the item and its durability. But yeah, it ended up, the details, that is really good. Now, this was off of my first image printing on glass. And again, using the Image R, it turned out really, really well. And so, nice little display piece. I like the rounded corners that I ended up putting on there. It kind of draws your attention from the corner into the image itself. And then by putting it on the little stand, it ended up just like that. So yeah, turned out nice. A nice little project. And so this can sit next to the TV stand, and yeah, it looks really cool. So anyway, that's what we ended up doing for that project. And I'm thinking, since I have a bunch of other pieces of glass and I've dialed in, I think what I'm going to end up doing is whatever I end up painting, putting on the back, maybe I'll try some yellow, but that could be easily done by, if you add some colored paper, something like that. I'm trying to think if I got any weird or different colored stuff. So if you do something like this, I don't know if that would end up working. but you could get some different effects on there, and I don't know if that would work or not. I think the black is just the best that I've seen. I had some other colored sheets of paper, and I was putting them behind there, and I was like, this just seems to be the best result. Now, another thing that I'm going to end up doing with the glass is to get a what was it? It was an LED light. And let me pull that up and show you. I'm sorry I don't have this queued up, but I wasn't thinking about even talking about this, but I figured, what the heck. Now I need to pull it up, and I'll show you exactly. Because I live in Korea, I got to do things a little bit differently. So let's take a look. Come on now. There we go. And let's go ahead and we'll add me in there and show you what I'm talking about. So I use Naver, which is kind of like a Korean version of Amazon. I can get Amazon deliveries, but some of these things are in country. And basically what we end up having here is a USB wood table lamp with a USB cable. And so there's a little USB strip on the inside of this, and it produces light. So I thought, it'd be kind of interesting to see how this would work with this little glass engraving thing if we shone some light from below through the glass, and if that would do anything. So they've got like a white light version, they have like a yellow light version, and it can come, basically what we end up seeing is that the slot to hold is 120 millimeters, and the total length of this is 100 millimeters. So with these corners I think it's a few more, and I'm not sure how thick it is, but I'm pretty sure I can put this in there even if I have to take the corners off. So when I get that, I ordered those, and when those come in, we'll see how those end up. Now they had the option of doing a circle, semicircle, and then they also have the square, and I think I ended up getting 2 semicircles with my order. Let me see what I ended up getting here. I got 1, I got 2. Order details. So I think they were both. So I got, they're both oval cover, or oval. And one is warm white and one is white. And it's USB, so you can plug it in, and it doesn't have a battery or anything, but that will be interesting to see how that comes into play. So anyway, that's what we end up doing, is that right there. So if you're thinking about doing some glass engraving, the great thing about this is that the glass pieces, I think I got off of Amazon. Actually, it was over Naver, but the people at Naver ordered it from Amazon, so they acted like a middleman, so I ended up paying a few dollars more than what I really should. But I think this little project turned out all right in regards to playing around, getting some good tests done. Of course, you always do material tests, and the result was pretty nice. Now, would I sell this? I don't know if somebody would. I think maybe if you had a full frame around this, because the edges are still got a little bit of sharpness to them. So if I was going to sell something like this, I would do a full frame around it. But with that being said, my cutting and engraving area is only 80 millimeters by 80 millimeters. So it'd be kind of hard to do that. I'd have to parse it up. But when I get a better laser, a bigger laser engraver, excuse me, then, I think I could do a lot better job. But yeah, painting all this up and then putting some varnish on it and having, the white background on there, I think this ended up as a really, really nice project. So as you can see there, and the corners ended up, gave it a little bit of, made it a little bit different. And then setting on the stand, it looks good. I could probably varnish it, varnish the sand it, maybe varnish these things as well, so get a little bit of a darker color, but I think this works fine for what it is. So anyway, that was the latest project that we ended up doing with the glass engraving, leaving the black paint on, using ImageR and the 6 steps to process that image, drug it into Lightburn, made sure that it passed through for that layer, so all of the settings that we did on ImageR would be set, so we don't have to mess with anything in Lightburn aside from setting the engraving speed and power. And I think it was an hour and 44 minutes later, boom, we got our engraving. And then didn't like the fully glass look, so did it with black, left the black on, varnished it up, and the rest is history. So anyway, yeah, just kind of playing around with that and see what we have. It turned out pretty well. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please give me a like and subscribe to the channel. I would appreciate that. And there's also a link if you want to buy me a coffee in the description box down below. I would appreciate that as well. As a matter of fact, these are some people, awesome people, who I have much respect for, that have bought me coffee, and all funds go back into the channel of buying materials or offset the materials and produce more videos. So with that being said, I appreciate those people, but at least like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I would really appreciate that. And tell me in the comments section, what do you think, honestly? I don't blow smoke up my nose or up anything else, but do you think this is decent? Do you think it's good? I mean, would you pay money for it? I don't know. Anything would help. If you have tips or suggestions, playlists of people who are like laser engraving gods, put them in the comment section down below, because I'm new to all this. So I'm just kind of trying this as I go, and maybe this was beginner's luck. I don't know. We'll have to do another one and find out. But until then, yeah, like and subscribe. I would appreciate that. And I want to say thanks to the people at Wainlux for the K10, the 5-watt version laser. It's working great. I didn't think I would like engraving as much as I do, honestly. It ends up, I'm really enjoying the learning process. I like the results that I'm getting, and the wife is pretty excited about it, so we got some projects that we want to do. But yeah, processing an image through ImageR has been invaluable, and of course Lightburn gives you some more bells and whistles than CutLab X. But yeah, it's been really fun, and I've been enjoying it. So anyway, I'm going to leave you with that. Again, I wanted to shorten this video, and it's like a half hour. You might say, a half hour short? Yeah, maybe not in social media world, but in my videos, they're usually an hour plus. So getting under 30 minutes is pretty good for me. So we'll leave it at that, and we will see you on the next video. Peace. Yeah, that turned out nice.